Okay, hi Facebook. Sorry for a few minute delay. We had some technical issues and I made an error myself, but thankfully Neill's picked that up. So as you can see, I'm joined by Michael Neill. Michael Neill is a very handsome fella to my left or right, depending on which way around the screen
to
is.
get that in.
I had to get that back
part of
in.
the contract. Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, I think most of you know Michael, but Michael is a best-selling author of 5 books, including The Inside Out Revolution over my shoulder, and Space Within, which is your latest book that came out, I believe, earlier this year, which is absolutely fantastic. And you've got your own radio show for Hay House Radio. You've got a fantastic TEDx talk out that I can't remember the number of times that I've shared that with people and recommended it. And you're also a very good public speaker, and I've seen you speak several times. And really, I think there's something quite special about the way that you tell stories and articulate the work that you do, which I think really seems to resonate with people and make it very, very easy to understand. So I'm delighted that you're joining us for this kind of special webinar for the group. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I realized about half an hour ago that whilst I had you'd offered to do this for us and I had connected this up, we actually hadn't discussed the topic at all.
No, I figured that would come. I can talk. I've been doing a radio show for 12 years. I can talk about anything.
Well,
not always intelligently, but I can talk about anything.
Well, I'm sure it'll be great, Michael. We like I said, this is for the Powerful Men's Group, and this really is a group for men who I kind of created for men who are aspiring towards excellence, kind of whatever that means to them. And we've got a whole bunch. I can see people are joining us on Facebook. So you know, I won't kind of call out everyone. I'm just going to say hello to everyone in one go so we don't get interrupted. But I will be keeping an eye on the comments. And if anyone's got any questions, I'd love to make this as interactive as possible and allow as much interaction between Michael and any of our group that we've got. Any questions you've got, nothing's off limits. Unless it is for you, Michael, but I'd like to think not.
We'll find out. I don't think anything is. If one of you guys can find something that's off limits, good on you.
So, and I've interviewed you before for my Relationship Series podcast, which was one of the best episodes I think I did. I really enjoyed it. So again, I'm looking forward to today. I'm going to get going in terms of I'll kickstart this and then we'll see what questions we get because we haven't had any so far, although we've had a lot of interest on this webinar. And the title of this webinar was, I think, on being a man or on being a powerful man. And for me, that means, a certain thing in terms of finding your inner power, because I found for me, coming across the work that you do, and I know many other people do, and the coaching from where you come from, one of the things that it really helped me see was the source of my own inner power. And for many years, I'd been around the personal development world, looking at various techniques and reading books and doing all sorts of things to try and improve myself and become enough, which never really worked. I mean, they were helpful, certainly. I'm not going to say nothing wasn't helpful at all. It worked to the level it did. But I realized I never felt powerful and enough. And then coming across, your work and the work of many of your colleagues, I realized, kind of almost a few years later, that what was the impact of that? And I realized that I had tapped into my inner power. And I really, for the first time, could say I feel like a powerful man. But that felt very different to what I thought powerful meant previously. But I'm just curious as to what that means to you, if anything, in terms of being powerful.
Well, it's funny because I smiled when you first said it for 2 reasons. One, because I've never thought in those terms, and B, because I was imagining my wife listening in on the interview. But I actually think it's an interesting choice of words for me, because when I was younger and first getting into personal development, sort of like you, trying everything, like what can I do? How do I fix me? One of the underlying motives was that I felt powerless. And so, of course, a book like Unlimited Power wow, this is perfect. And I was doing all these things to be powerful, which just reinforced my sense that I wasn't. And because who tries to become powerful but somebody who doesn't think they're powerful or powerful enough? And at a certain point, and there wasn't a defining moment with this one, but at a certain point, I noticed that I didn't care. Like it was irrelevant to me whether I thought of myself as powerful, whether anyone else thought of me as powerful. What was relevant to me was, did I have sufficient power to do what I wanted to do in the world? So, like, I don't care if my phone is at 1% or 94% power, as long as it's working long enough for me to make a call. My 94% phone is more powerful than my 1% phone, but it doesn't matter because all I want to do is make a phone call. And that's when it kind of shifted for me and stopped being separate to what I wanted to do in the world. It was relevant sometimes, but it wasn't distinct from how I wanted to live my life. And funnily enough, when I stopped caring, I think I probably my battery charge jumped. I think in reality, I'm probably a much more powerful man than I used to be. But it was because I stopped caring, not because I became more powerful.
Yeah, I love that, and I can see a lot of other people do. We're getting a lot of thummy thumbs coming up and hearts and all sorts of things that Facebook does. Yeah, I love that because I can really resonate with it too. That there was a sense for myself that, that number one, I wasn't powerful enough, and two, I was absolutely petrified of anyone else finding out the truth. And I had to put on this mask, and I feel that so many men do that too. In the work that I do, that really and there's the generalization that men don't talk, and we only talk about beer and sports and all the rest of it. But I found that certainly for me, I was so afraid to kind of even recognize that I didn't feel powerful, that everything was built upon this facade almost. But when we kind of break through that, I think almost that's the first step to realizing, like you beautifully said, it doesn't matter.
Like, did you have in the UK? Did you have the ads for the Charles Atlas bodybuilding program, like in the back of comic books or magazines? And in America, it was this ad that ran. I think it's been running since the 1950s, maybe even earlier. And it's this skinny guy on the beach with his girlfriend, and this big guy comes over and kicks sand in his face and takes the girl. And I mean, it's very 1950s. And the the skinny kid goes, "Nobody will ever kick sand in my face again. I'm going to send off for the Charles Atlas bodybuilding course."
All right.
Comes back to the beach 12 weeks later and kicks sand in the police's face and walks off with the girl. I bought that. Like when I was 15, I sent off for that and I bought it. And I did. I actually muscled up for the first time in my little life. It coincided nicely with adolescence, so it could have been a bit coincidental. But what was funny about it is I was then a powerless guy with abs. Like, like the fact that my shell looked better on the beach made no difference at all to my sense of power. And that sort of points to what you said, is when you kind of see it's an inside job. Like you're either connected up to the power source or you're not in any given moment. And whether, you can be a powerful man in a wheelchair and you feel absolutely powerless and look like a bodybuilder, then you kind of see, oh, okay, power isn't about the form. Power isn't about what I look like. Power isn't about how other people perceive me, even, unless you're thinking in terms of social power or influence. Power, as I think we're talking about it, is, am I connected up with the life force? Am I full of life? And if I'm full of life, I'm incredibly powerful in those moments. And in those moments where I'm cut off from it, I'm not. And even then, it's like, I don't think my iPhone cares. Like, I honest to God do not think my iPhone is right now sitting in a Facebook group, in an iPhone for powerful iPhones, discussing how it can become more powerful. I don't think it gives a shit. I think it wants, it knows, if it needs a recharge, it gets a recharge. But other than that, I don't think it thinks about it. That's the potential for us. it's relevant, but it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you've just dismantled my group in one fell swoop there.
Sorry. Should we talk about football and beer?
Yeah, look, we've run out of things to talk about now. That's it, right? Yeah. So, I mean, we've got a bunch of people watching, and Pat Wu says, "Unlimited Power. Where can I get that book?" With a little winky, with a little winky face.
At all good booksellers near you.
So, you know, the cool thing for me, and I think you kind of alluded to this, was when you stopped caring about being powerful or not being powerful, you you just didn't care and you just showed up in the world, and you've been remarkably successful, right? And I think this is a paradox for me, and I'm curious as to how you see this. That because it was similar for me, I wanted a whole load of things out there in the world, right? Like I wanted to achieve certain things, I had certain goals, and when I realized like I was wanting all of those things to feel something that those things couldn't give me, and so I stopped chasing those things. It didn't mean like it wasn't either you do well in the world or you become this kind of spiritual guy with like nothing. Like one thing that I was really surprised about was once I stopped seeing that illusion that things, people, money can't make me feel anything. Actually, I did really well in the world, and I think you're a great example of that in terms of your books have been very successful, your radio show is very successful. It's not either or, and I like to point people to that I certainly when I first came across this understanding, the inside out understanding, as you point to in one of your books, that a lot of people said, well, I don't want to know that it's inside out. I had a guy tell me, I don't want to know it's inside out if that means I'm not going to go and chase women anymore, because I like chasing women. Or I don't want to know this stuff if that means I'm not going to make money, because they think it's either or, and I really see it as both. But if you don't get the stuff from outside, you don't really care, which is the kind of paradox that makes it more likely you're successful.
I think I half agree with that. And what I mean by that is it clearly isn't either or. Right? It is not a straight choice at all. You don't need to become more monkish to be more in touch with the power. With the inside out understanding at all. I came into it a bit monkish. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like I've been with one woman for 30 years. What do I know? But the point of that is that as you tune into this inner power, this inner guidance, because it's not just like here's where it's not like a cell phone. It's also the operating system. It's also the internet. It's also a guidance system. If your guidance system has you chasing after women, then you'll chase after women. If it has you doing things that make money, you'll make money. But if what you're really guided to do is live a really quiet life in a nice cottage by the sea where you repair bicycles, then you'll do that. So it's, to a certain extent, you're opening yourself up to a level of guidance. And the fear that I had with that was, oh, what if it guides me to do things I don't want to do? Right? What if it guides? I know what it's going to guide me to do. I'm going to have to go freaking save the Middle East, and I want to do cartoons. So this is literal, right? I don't know if you read this. I think I put it in one of my books, but this actually happened. I was approached by a client, and they were going to smuggle me into Palestine to help mediate peace talks in between Israeli leaders and Palestinian leaders. And at the same time, like the same day, or maybe it was the day before, I'd auditioned to play a mouse on the Clifford the Big Red Dog cartoon, because I used to do voiceover. And I so wanted to do the voiceover job. I so wanted to do Clifford the Big Red Dog, but I thought, oh no, I'm supposed to be following inner guidance, and inner guidance is going to. And what I realized was we make up a lot of crap. Like, I made up this whole story about how inner guidance was worthy, and inner guidance would only have me do worthy sounding things. But when I actually tuned in, it was really clear to me that I wanted to stay and do the cartoon. And as it happened, it turned out that the whole Middle East thing fell apart anyway, so it wouldn't have happened. I didn't know that at the time. And what I've found since then is that the intelligence behind life is a lot kinder than you think it's going to be. I have never been guided to do something that I didn't want to do. I've never been guided away from something that I really did want to do, other than in the moment where I was just lusting after something in the world. And, I remember like I had this one offer from an organization that was clearly a front for the Eastern European mafia, but they were paying so much money. And at the time, we had just had our third kid, and I really could have done with the money. And I remember trying to convince inner guidance that I should take the gig and pretend that I didn't hear it. And you can't do that. It doesn't work really. You kind of, once you know.
Yeah.
But on the whole, there's a kindness in my feeling of it to this intelligence. I genuinely can say the more I have given my life over to following this inner movement, this inner power, the more beautiful, the more perfect things I would never have put on a goal list or a vision board have unfolded in my life.
I love that because it reminds me of a conversation I was having with a client this morning, and saying a similar sort of thing around, for me over the last 5 years, my gut has never guided me wrong, and it had never been guiding me wrong. But as I started to drop misunderstandings of how the world actually worked, how my mind worked, I just started to hear it. It kind of just, the volume got turned up on my gut.
Yeah.
And it just plays out the way it plays out. And I said every step of the way that I've, certain significant steps in my own journey over the last few years, there's been, I said, at least one person vocally been telling me I'm doing it wrong, right? And I said, but that's okay, because that's part of the game, right? Like if you take certain steps and move in a certain direction, it means that you're not moving in another direction. And so that's okay, because people are going to disagree with you. But for me so far, it hasn't sent me off in the wrong direction. And so I'm kind of just sticking with that for now until if it works.
Until you get something else.
Yeah.
Like I went to, this is a weird story, but there's a very sort of she's not really famous, but she in Hollywood there's a psychic, and she's the psychic to the Hollywood stars, and she heard about me, and one of my clients worked with her, and so we arranged, she wanted to meet, and so we arranged to do a session swap where I would coach her and she'd give me a reading. And the reading that she gave me, and this was back when I was doing NLP in the mid 2000s, and I was at the top of the game. I was working with Richard Bandler and Paul McKenna, and we had 700 people in a seminar, and she said to me, "Ooh," it was a little hokey, but she said, "Oh, you're not going to be doing this work for much longer. Oh, no, you're going to go into another field, and it's kind of a controversial field, and you're going to be at the forefront of this controversial field in psychology." And I remember dismissing her completely, because the one thing I knew about me is I wasn't going to be involved in anything controversial or be at the, like, that's not me. And it was probably 4 or 5 years later, after I transitioned careers completely and got into the forefront of this alternative field that's kind of controversial in psychology, that I went, holy crap. That's actually, so she in some way was able to tune into that movement of the guidance, which I just wasn't hearing at all.
Yeah.
But when it came, I heard it, and I've been following it long enough that I know not to ignore it.
That's so cool. No, I love that. I'm going to get to some questions, because we've all of a sudden had a load of questions, cool. And I want to make sure we answer some of them. So we've got a question from Nick, and Nick said, a question that's coming up for me hearing you two talk is, what is masculinity and femininity? And I know in the kind of personal development space, there's a lot of talk around, so this is not Nick now, this is me saying, there's a lot of talk around masculine energy, feminine energy. What's your take on that, Michael?
Well, I have a fairly literal take on it, in that, to me, masculine energy is a way of describing the attribute of energy that is forward moving and creative. So we call it masculine energy when the energy is coming out and creating in the world. And we describe it as feminine when the energy is receptive, when it's receiving. And the metaphor is obvious, right? You know, it's penises and vaginas, ladies and gentlemen. But it's not really a masculine energy and a feminine energy. It's just that in the same way as the ocean ebbs and flows, energy is both active, creative, and receptive, reflective at different times. And men are associated with more of that masculine energy culturally, but that's only because it's called masculine energy because of that. It's not because there's more masculine energy in them. And similarly, women tend to be more receptive and reflective, but that's, again, it's called feminine energy because of that. It's not the other way around. So that's what masculine and feminine at the energy level mean to me. And you want to be, if you want to be powerful, you want to allow the energy to be both active and creative when it's in that mode, and receptive and reflective when it's in that mode. And in fact, when I work with creatives, which is a lot of the work that I do, that's the number one thing is bringing that back into balance. You know, I in a slightly more religious metaphor, you know, you sometimes you got to go to church before you preach. Sometimes you got to go for a walk in the mountains before you write your novel. Sometimes you've got to get inspired before you can write. And sometimes people spend way too much time trying to feel it and never get round to doing anything. And sometimes people spend way too much time doing stuff and get totally cut off from the beauty and the energy and the power that comes. So that's what it means to me.
Oh, that's a beautiful answer. Thank you for that, Michael. Yeah, that I've never heard it described in that way, but really makes so much sense. And Nick, I hope that makes sense to you. If not, please follow up. Sebastian's got a question: how to have a powerful, difficult discussions with our lady and give constructive feedback that serves her and us and is not destructive.
Wow. So what was his name?
Sebastian. So I know English is not his first language.
That's okay. So Sebastian, I'm going to have to give you a more generic answer than I'd like, because I'm sure that your situation is quite specific and I don't know it, and this isn't the format where we can do it as a dialogue. But the two things that jump out from that might be helpful. One is difficult is in the mind of the beholder. So I worked with a comedian, some people know the story, who started out playing clubs in London and then became a big deal and got an arena, 3,000 seat gig. And he called me and he wanted me to come down and be on call for the week that he was performing at this arena, because it was a really big gig. And I was busy at the time, and I said to him, look, let me save you some money and save me some time. Stop telling yourself it's such a big gig, right? I said, let me guess, you're going to stand up on stage and tell jokes, right? He went, yeah. I said, and you do that a lot, right? He said, yeah, I've been doing it for 20 years. I said, in fact, you're pretty good at it, because that's why you've got the 3,000 seat gig, right? He went, yeah. I said, so you're going to stand up in front of a group of people and tell jokes, do that. Now, my point as it relates to you is, the more you convince yourself it's a difficult conversation, the more you'll gird your loins, the more you'll man up, the more you'll have to do to get yourself to have it. And then you're having it from a terrible place, because you're already like this before you even get into it. There's an old joke about a guy who borrows he wants to borrow his neighbor's ladder. And on his way over to his neighbor's house, he starts thinking, oh man, he's going to bring up the time I borrowed his lawnmower and didn't return it. And, for like 2 weeks, but I mean, it's not my fault. I mean, he borrowed my screwdriver set. I didn't get that back. And there was that time I came and helped him with his car, and he never even like thanked me for that. And I mean, this is, and he gets there and he knocks on the neighbor's door, and the neighbor goes, oh, hi, Joe. And he goes, keep your damn ladder. Right. That's what happens when you prepare for a difficult conversation. You've had so many conversations in your head that you're not able to be present. Your woman with your partner. So that's one thing that's going to help tremendously. The second thing is, I would be really wary of the phrase constructive feedback. So I don't know, you may mean something different by it. So you may genuinely mean, I love her, I'm seeing her mess something up in her life and I'd like to help her. And that's a little bit different. But what most people I talk to mean is, she needs to get her act together. And, you know, our relationship would be much better if she was like this. And the problem with that, let me, do I have time to share a metaphor?
Sure, yeah.
So I share this in my Living from the Inside Out program, but there's a notion I first heard from Dr. George Pransky of a maintenance-free relationship, where if you start to see that really relationships are about enjoying each other's company, first and foremost. Imagine you're in an old house and you and your beloved are sitting by the fire, and you got a glass of wine in hand, and it's the beginning of a great night, but there's a slight draft. And you think, oh man, I would enjoy this even more if there wasn't that draft. So you say, hey, baby, wait there. I'm just going to go get that. And you go over, find the window where there's the draft, but it's warped. You can't push the window down. And so you think, okay, I better go grab the WD-40. And so on your way to get the WD-40 from wherever you keep your WD-40, you notice that, you know, that the dishes still aren't done, and you think, oh man, I don't want to have this great night and then have to do the dishes at the end of the night. So you do the dishes, and then you get the WD-40, and then on the way back to the window, you remember something else that needs taken care of, and you just think, oh man, I'm going to be able to totally concentrate if I just take care of that one last email from work. And anyways, by the time you get back to the fire, she's gone, the fire's out, and you're alone. A lot of us treat our relationships as if they'd be better if we could just fix this bit, if we could just change this bit, if we could just make this bit. And we miss the actual relationship. We miss the actual relating. So this might be completely irrelevant to you, mate. So I apologize if it is, but hopefully it'll be relevant to somebody listening. If you want to have a great relationship, take fixing your partner off your agenda. If they come to you and ask, share, be with them, help them. It's not always a trap, right? But guy to guy personal experience, you're going to relate a lot better if you can be with them as they are than if you think they need to change in order to have a great relationship with you, for what it's worth.
Yeah, Michael, thank you for that. And you know, I've come across so many men who innocently, you know, and with best intentions, think that part of being powerful as a man, and you know, being a real man, and whatever that means, you know, kind of telling her where she's wrong, because you know, because then you're not going to put up with it, and it's well intentioned but misguided. And I think you talk beautifully to that. This is not a question, but I really wanted to share this with you because this is from Hogne, who is a paramedic. And he said, last weekend I had a 17-year-old girl as a patient in the ambulance. She was standing on the bridge considering to jump and end her life. We had an hour together during the drive to the psychiatric ward for youth. I showed her your TEDx video because of your own story with this. She really got the part about Bob the homeless that moved into her brain. We talked more about the inside-out nature of reality, and she went into this flowering. She opened up her shell, and I could see in her eyes that she had found some hope. Thank you very much.
See, that's not fair. The one place I'm not supposed to cry is in a men's group. Thanks, Hogne. That's beautiful, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just had to share that. Thank you. And if anyone hasn't seen that TEDx talk, let me know and I'll share it in the group. It's really cool. It's great. Right now, FJ has said, do you, Michael, not have a vision board? If life is what happens to you while you are busy making other plans, guess that means you can still make plans, but you don't have to. How do you go about it?
Well, so no, as it happens, I don't have a vision board. I think the last time I tried to do something like that was 1988 when I first heard about it, and I thought it sounded cool. Personally, and this is just me, for my business, we have a sense of direction. So we know what our financial targets are. We know what kind of a business we want to be, and we're working towards that. So there is a vision. I don't want a vision for my life, personally. I want my life to unfold. The reason I like having a vision for my business is it's not just me. So if I'm going to coordinate action amongst a group of people, having a shared vision is incredibly helpful. But for my life, I want to be surprised by what happens. Because my experience is my life has turned out 1,000 times better than the best life I could have imagined. And so I'm not that interested in my vision. I'm interested in what's possible. So it's different. I have it very differently in my business than I do in my personal life.
And just a follow-up question, I guess this is from me, Michael, and I love that. I guess that still allows you to, because I've heard you talk about your business and how things have changed for you in recent years. It sounds like you have still a lot more space in your business than you used to, and a lot of flexibility.
So I mean, I'm going to literally read to you. This is our business thing for 2017. Our business strategy. Number 1, do good things. Number 2, be scary good at what you do. That's it. That's our business strategy. So it's not like a really tight vision, but it is a guiding vision. And we do have, what we're up to, creating positive cash flow, becoming product-based, creating an uptick in visibility. We do have things we're moving towards, but it's not helpful in my mind to get too specific about how you're going to do it, because how the hell do you know? Like, everything good that has happened in my life, I didn't know about usually about 24 hours before it happened. In other words, I meet somebody and there's a new opportunity. Something occurs to me that had never occurred to me before, and suddenly there's a few more zeros in my bank account, right? If you understand that that's how creativity works, that's how business works, that's how life works, the skill you want to cultivate is being open, responsive, and available. And then when something comes, you want to be able to move on it. You want to be able to act on it. That's as far as I'm concerned, the business skill for the 21st century. The old model of, somebody once described it as the Soviet diesel tractor. They go very slowly, but they never wear out. And in 20 years, you'll have plowed the field, right? That old model doesn't take power into account. It doesn't take this aliveness into account. It doesn't take the infinite variability of life into account. It just goes, if I plod forward enough, I will plow a field. True, but who cares? Like, is that really what you want to do with your life, is plow a field? Is that it? So that's my point of view.
And I guess in answering that as well, it's like, you might think right now you want to plow a field, but tomorrow you might not. And I think we live in this really cool time in history where we've really got so many more opportunities than we've ever had before. Alfredo, who was a new coach, he's got a question. In your sessions with your clients, is there a common problem or misunderstanding that you see on people that doesn't allow them to be powerful? Any common suggestions to addressing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's always the same two things with anyone, male, female, businessy, personal, and one is people vastly underestimate their power. They take their feeling as being a measure of their capacity. And if you get insecure, and most of us, well, all of us do from time to time, you're going to think you're not going to feel powerful all the time unless you keep telling yourself how powerful you are. And that's artificial anyways. That's like my iPhone telling itself, I'm at 43%, I'm at 43% when it's at 12. It's like, okay, you feel really charged up, but you're not. It's not gonna actually help. So understanding that what you've done to date and how you feel are not measures of your true power. That's really helpful to people to see, because then they start to sense we have the power of the universe in us. It's like a wave, thinking, oh, I'm just a little wave, and then looking around and going, oh no, crap, I'm part of the ocean, man. Fear me. Right? When we see what we have behind us, we're not daunted by much. World. The other misunderstanding, I'm sure this is something Ankush must talk about with you guys, and the book that he gave you, is all about, is we misunderstand where our feelings are coming from, where our experience is coming from. And so we spend an awful lot of time trying to change the world to make ourselves feel differently. And it's all wasted energy. And when you start to see that you literally can feel powerful sitting homeless on the street and powerless sitting on a throne in a palace, it stops looking like a good idea to put a lot of energy into changing the world to make you feel differently. And that leaves you with an incredible amount of capacity to actually change the world in ways that are interesting to you and helpful to you. So it's not that you can't change the world, it's just that you're not doing it to make yourself feel powerful. You're doing it because the world needs changing. Did I answer the question? I got a little on my high horse there.
No, that was
okay.
That was great. And again, okay. please, if anyone is wanting more or a follow up, please do comment and I'll put it to Michael. I missed a question from earlier on. Marco asked a question. How do you know it's gut feeling, higher intelligence when you have a feeling, and does it even matter?
I think it's really easy to overthink that as if they're two completely different things. It's a way of talking about it. What I've found is, I use this analogy sometimes, that when you first start recognizing that there's a higher intelligence that comes through us, and that sometimes Bob the homeless guy is shouting in your head and going, go left, right? Then it seems like, well, how do you tell the difference? Well, I don't know. How do you tell the difference between a blowjob and being hit in the forehead with a 2x4? They're totally different experiences. Now, at first, it doesn't seem like it because our heads are very noisy. But when we quiet down, when we stop trying so hard, when we chill the fuck out, it becomes really apparent. We just know. There's some things we just know. And if you're spending a lot of time thinking about which is it, it's probably not inner wisdom. Because you just know with inner wisdom. And often it's not like you know and then act on it. You're already doing it.
Yeah.
Like I noticed at a certain point, I don't remember what year it was, but I was still very into goal setting, and I had my plan for the year. And I noticed in the end of January that year, when I was reviewing my life, I was living two lives. I was following my plan and doing the things on my plan, but then there was this whole other life I was living that had nothing to do with my plan, but was so much more beautiful and so much cooler. And that was the first time I went, wow, yeah, I can override my inner intelligence. I can make things happen. But it's not a good idea. It's just, yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, I love it. I once asked a mentor of mine when I was really confused about a previous job I had. I was like, I really want to quit this job. It's really annoying me. And I was being pointed to, well, where are your feelings coming from? And I was like, but what if this is my wisdom? And he said to me, he goes, does your wisdom ever come with that feeling of like, And I was like, no.
You bastard.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. Me too. But
yeah. So yeah, thank you for commenting in that way. And Hogney's got a follow-up question to FJ's question. FJ had the question about the vision board. Yeah. And he said, today with all the opportunities, do you have any criteria that help you choose between all the options?
let me say two things to that. First off, I wouldn't care that much if I were you about what I do. Like what I do works really well for me. Um, I work with a lot of high flyers, and I like visiting their lives, and then I come home to my little house with my with my wife and my kids, and we watch at the moment Outlander, and have a nice meal and go to bed. So works for me would bore the fuck out of a lot of my clients. What they do works for them, not remotely interesting to me. So I appreciate the questions. I'll answer them. But for God's sake, don't try to model your life on mine. My life is perfect for me. I wouldn't recommend it for anyone else. Having said that, let me do my best to answer your question. I, as best I can, try to live a decision-free life. And what I mean by that is if it's not obvious to me what to do, I don't do it. And if it's obvious, it's not really a decision because it's obvious. So I sometimes talk about it as a no-brainer life. Like if it's not a no-brainer, I'm like, why would I make a decision if I don't know what to do? Now, very occasionally, and it is, I hesitate to mention it because people will go, oh yeah, mine's like that. Once in a blue moon, there's a real-time deadline for something. And then you may as well flip a coin because you either know or you don't. And if you know, it's easy. And if you don't know, flip a coin. I mean, you don't know. That's the whole point. So am I perfect at that? No. But has my life gotten simpler and simpler, and have my decisions gotten better and better since I've stopped making them? Yeah, they really have.
Yeah. No, that's. I hope that answers you, Hogne. And I love the first thing you said there, Michael, about modeling, because I know when I can't remember if it was on the TEDx talk or maybe when I've seen you in person, you talked about, the work you did before was all about modeling. And I think that was, and a lot of people do that and, look to model others. And I was talking to one of the guys who's watching this today. I was talking to him earlier and I was saying, you can kind of copy what I do, but what I do works for me. And that's why it works for me, because it's what I do. And everyone in this group, and I'm sure every one of your clients, they've got their thing going on for them, and that's what works for them. And if they
can I jump in?
Sure.
Because I want to make a distinction that didn't occur to me before. I'm not saying you can't learn from people, but if you like the feel of somebody else's life, if you look at them, because I do, there are people who I really admire.
Yeah.
What you want to look for, and this is, I spent years as a professional modeler, right? So but everyone tries to copy the behaviors, the path, the strategies. That is not the relevant bit, because those bits are idiosyncratic to that person at that time in that context.
Yeah.
If you want to try and get somewhere, get a feel for where they live their life from. Because every decision they make, every choice they make comes out of that. And what you'll find is actually there's a remarkable commonality, whether they're a successful actor or they're a successful business person or they're a successful tree surgeon. They live their life from a place of relative ease and grace, in an unhurried, unpressured, I don't want to say meditative because it probably conjures up images of oming, but even if they're very active, there's something kind of quiet at core about them. That you can model, because that we all have as a capacity inside us. How it shows up in the world will be completely different for you than for me, than for Ankush, than for anyone else you might admire.
No, that's a great distinction, and thank you for that. And you're right. There's a difference for me between looking at someone else and modeling them to try and be like them versus, what can I learn for me, applicable to me in that.
Yeah.
We've got no more questions right now. Might get one more, but I've got a question which I'd love to ask you, and it's something that I don't have an answer for. And I guess is really relevant to men and being powerful in the world, is that right now, I think, very topically, culturally, there's a lot going on around some allegations against some Hollywood types, a lot of women coming out and saying, "Look, we're facing a lot of, a lot of abuse and harassment." And I've been kind of sitting back and seeing this across Facebook, and I'm sure you have as well. And it's making me think again, like, what is my role as a man in kind of society and culture today? And I think it's been, for most of my life, it's been really muddy. Like, there's lots of people saying, well, this is what it means to be a man, and someone will go, no, this is what it means to be a man. And I feel there's lots of societal changes happening right now, and it's not very clear to me. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that. And I think a lot of people, a lot of men feel like it's a bit of a minefield, like we don't quite know how to act right now.
Yeah. Let me have a go. I haven't talked about this particularly publicly, so I will now. If I was going to give one universal piece of advice to men, it would be, don't be a dick, even though you can be a lot of the time and get away with it. Right. And I'll tell you a story that seems maybe very left field, but it isn't for me. We had a dog. My first dog was named Hobbs in London, and he was insane. He suffered from something called cocker rage, which when England was an island and there was the quarantine laws, it still is an island, but when the quarantine laws were in full effect, all the dogs became inbred, and in Cocker Spaniels, that led to this thing called cocker rage. We didn't know that when we got him, but how it manifested is this cute little dog would turn on people, and you'd see the mist descend, and he would just attack anything that was near him. Well, I had it in my head that my dog, I can train him, I can fix him. The vet had told us to have him put down immediately, but damn it, I was going to train him. So I hired a wolf trainer from the movies. I thought, well, if you can train a wolf, you got to be able to train a cocker spaniel, right? And after working with the wolf trainer for about 6 months, he said, "You really need to have this dog put down." But no. But so I remember once while I was working with the wolf trainer, he had me carry a big stick so that when the dog went nuts, I could shove the stick in his mouth to stop him from biting anything else. And I remember walking, I think it was in Highgate in London, and the dog was going nuts, and I had the stick in him, and I was controlling the dog because I was bigger than him. And I saw a big guy, like a 6'4" guy, coming at me the other way, looking at me. And I don't know how to explain it, but in that moment, I thought, wow, I'm bigger than this dog, so I can do this to this dog. If that guy decided that I was abusing the dog, he's bigger than me, so he could come over and beat me up and stop me from doing that. That's no basis for society. Now, that sounds like a really big leap from a small incident, but that informed the way we've raised our children. We're bigger than our kids, or at least I was. My son's now about 6'1", but we could have gotten them to do what we wanted for a long time because we were bigger than them, and we had power, and then later because we had money. We never wanted them to do what we wanted because we were bigger than them. Now, in a pinch, we would, right? If they were going to do something we genuinely thought was stupid or dangerous, we would be all parental. But one of the things I loved about the way we raised our kids is even when my son was grounded for 2 months for something that I won't share publicly, he didn't argue with us. He knew. We had a sufficiently mutually respectful agreement that it was fair cop gov, right? With our daughter, who could have turned into a really rebellious teenager, we had enough respect for her and she had enough respect for us that we could talk things through, and it never turned nasty. Whereas I know we could have kept her in line for a while, and then when she was older, she would have totally fucked us over. That's true in a family. That's true in a society. Just because you have a position of authority and can abuse it, just because you are physically bigger and can assert that on someone, that's no basis for a life. That's no basis for a society. If Google can have as their unofficial motto, "Don't be evil," I think men should have as our unofficial motto, "Don't be dicks." So I don't know if that's actually helpful to anyone but me, but that's how I feel about it.
No, what really comes across for me, Michael, is that, I think, again, we're coming back to the same thing about gut, about wisdom, all of that sort of stuff. I think ultimately I always know what is the right thing to do and what isn't in my heart.
Yeah.
And I think that's all it comes down to, is follow that. And if I follow that, like someone sent me, I won't say what it was, someone sent me a little video, a guy friend of mine, and it was supposed to be like a guy, ha ha ha, let's look at this video. And I looked at it and I was just like, you know what, that just doesn't sit right with me. Like that, to me, like it was, I won't say exactly what happened, but it was a guy and his mates were filming him and he played a prank on a girl. Let's just put it that way. And I looked at it and I went, that's not right. And I showed my wife and I went, I think that's harassment. I don't think that's I think that's really crossing a line. And she looked at me and she went, yeah, it is. And I saw in that moment, it's like, that's it. It's always following that. Like, I know, in me, I know what's right and I know what's wrong. And I think that's, I used to work for an organization that that's where they used to define, I think, integrity or something, one of the company values. They went, just ask yourself, is this the right thing or not?
Yeah. And I think all I would add to that is, when in doubt, don't be a dick. Like, when you do see it, of course. And I think that's the gorgeous possibility for all of us, is as we wake up more, as we get less self-conscious about, are we powerful enough? Are we manly enough? It's much easier to make those distinctions. But if you're ever not sure, don't be a dick.
I'm aware of the time. We've had a couple more questions. How much time do you have, Michael, or do you have to go?
Well, I tell you what, let me see if I can send a quick email to the person I'm supposed to be speaking to at 9 and ask him that I can call him 15 minutes later.
Okay.
And then I'll stay on.
No, I appreciate that. So we've got 2 questions, Nick and FJ. If Michael can do that, which really appreciate it, then hopefully we'll get to both of your questions and then we will finish up. And thank you.
Okay, that's no. I wanted to let him know. I mean, I'm not going to wait for his response, but I didn't want to leave him hanging.
Okay, great.
Cool. Yeah, let's do it.
So Nick's got a question, and I've seen, Hogney's also wanting to hear the answer to this, which is, what's your take on self-discipline? I'm thinking in mastering a skill like music, is discipline built into the way things unfold?
I've always loved a quote. So my new book coming out in January is called Creating the Impossible. And one of the quotes I have in there, and I'm just realizing I don't remember who said it, but that discipline is remembering what you want. And I love that description of discipline. If you remember what you want, you'll stay focused on it, and somebody else can describe it as discipline. Self-discipline to me is a little bit like, I want to feel powerful. It's a self-image thing. It's an ego thing. It's not really that helpful. Yes, to accomplish anything worthwhile, you will need to stick at it. People can describe that not inaccurately as discipline. But the problem with describing it that way is people then go, how do I become more disciplined? You don't. You just stay focused on what you want and let other people describe you as disciplined. And that's true whether you're building a better body, you're building a better motorbike, you're building a better business. It's the same thing across the board. Discipline is a description of what happens when somebody stays focused on an objective over time. It's a lot easier to stay focused on an objective over time than it is to be self-disciplined. I don't even know where to begin with being self-disciplined, other than punishing myself if I'm bad and rewarding myself if I'm good. And then you're getting into dog training, not human being training.
It's a little bit like motivation. You only need it when you're struggling to do something. Right?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, my wife hates me when I use this example, but I have never needed to listen to a Tony Robbins tape before having sex with my wife. It's like, I don't need motivation. I'm in, right? It's like.
Right, we'll get to on that note, we'll get to the last question, which is, I'm in the process of choosing creating my coaching clients. This is FJ. I have so far focused on people that believe they were broken. I do not want to play small anymore going forward and choose whomever I think, hell, that would be fun and a great challenge to serve that person, even if it seems out of reach, say, e.g. Elon Musk. Would you like to share some of your experiences that might be relevant to the coaches amongst us in this group?
Yeah, yeah, happy to. Again, with the caveat that Ankush and I discussed earlier, that for God's sake, don't try to do it my way. But I think unless you genuinely have a passion for plumbers, the idea of niching, I think people come to it way too early in their businesses. And since you're saying in a coaching business, I train coaches, so specifically coaching business. Niching is something that you do when you have too much interest in your work and you need a way to narrow down the field. Most people want to niche before they've had a single client. If you've got 1,000 people who want to work with you and you've got time to work with 20, you'll need to niche. If you are getting a ton of people through marketing, and you need to kind of focus in, then maybe at that point you want to target your marketing more. But premature niching kills more coaching businesses than anything I've seen. Because how do you know? How do you know who you like to coach? How do you know who you're impactful with? Unless you've been doing it for a while, you don't. Now, once you've been doing it for a while, you might start to notice. So when I started out doing more therapeutic work than coaching when I was doing NLP. And it turned out I was really good with people who had panic attacks. So I kind of became the panic attack guy. But I didn't set out to be the panic attack guy. It just turned out they were a good audience for me. When I moved to Hollywood, I became somebody who worked with celebrities. I didn't choose that, to be honest. One came and then they referred another and then they referred another. And then I became the celebrity guy for a while. So that's my take. Like, that's my experience, but it's also my experience as a teacher of coaches. I'm not saying you can't niche, but I would suggest you coach your ass off. And had maybe, certainly at least 50 clients. I probably would be more inclined to say 100. Then you can take a look at, hey, is there anything about the 100 people I've coached that they have in common that would help me sort of target a little more going forward? Otherwise, I would take all comers. And you can have a financial bar, but even that early on, I used to coach people for coffee, like for about 2 years. It pissed my wife off because we needed the money, but I wasn't ready. I kind of knew I wasn't ready. And so I would just, if somebody, asked for help, I'd say, yeah, take me for coffee, or as I got better, they had to take me for lunch. But and my wife, it drove her nuts. But one of the things I love about her is a couple of years later, when I did have a successful practice, she said to me, unsolicited, she said, I look back on those years when you were doing all that coffee cup coaching, what we called it, and I can see that's when you built your business, even though none of those people are your clients now. And I hadn't, like I say, it wasn't deliberate, but somehow I knew to just coach my ass off. When I got to a certain point, it became obvious. Same thing I was talking about earlier with decisions. It became obvious who I was working with. And it's changed over time, and it's been fun. So that's, somebody asked me my niche a couple of years ago, and I said, people I enjoy spending time with who can pay me. And to a certain extent, that's as accurate as I can get.
Yeah, I love it. And you know what, as you were answering that question, it reminded me about this very group, because this group I created about 3 years ago, and I didn't have any intention of creating it. But someone asked me, well, Steve Chandler. So Steve Chandler, I was at a training that he was doing with Rich Litvin, who's one of your apprentices. And they said, where have your last 10 clients come from? And I looked back and I was like, oh, 8 of them seem to be men who are into personal development. And I wasn't trying to kind of coach them. I wasn't niching them. And that's kind of what came about. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. And now I do this and I enjoy it, but it's also not the only thing that I do. And yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for postponing your next client as well by 15 minutes. That's so generous of you to do. I haven't actually been reading out all of the wonderful comments we've had, because it would have been too distracting. But, so many, people loving all the way back from the phone charge recharge metaphor. People loving that. That's funny. Love that story. I don't even know which ones. There were so many to say, but people have loads of these comments. So thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
I know everyone's got value out of it. Would you have any problem? I've got a YouTube channel for this group, but obviously that's open to everyone. Would you be okay for me to share it there in a few weeks' time, or would you want us to keep it just here?
I think that's fine.
Okay, great. Because I've already had people ask me, where can we watch this afterwards? So thank you so much. I've loved this. I've got so much from it. You've made me laugh as always, which is always a pleasure. And I'm sure this is not the last time we've spoken to you. I highly recommend all of your stuff. I think it's fantastic. If anyone's listening to this and they want to know more, what can they do? How can they get more of Michael?
Well, so michaelneill.org is home on the web. Those of you who are interested in coaching, Super Coach Academy, we've only got 4 spots left for next year, but we'll do them again in the future. I'll be in London next week. One of the groups is sold out, but a couple of the public talks are still open. And you can find out all of it at michaelneill.org.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I'll have a look at that myself. Well,
cool.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'll look forward to seeing you either online or in real life at some point. And
it'd be nice to see you in real life. We can do the man hug thing.
2 taps on the back. That's it.
That's right. I got you.
All right, Michael. Well, have a great day. Have a great Friday, and I'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Nice to meet you all.